Hey guys, welcome back to the Watch Gauge YouTube channel. In my effort to have some videos on the channel that aren't just specifically about the watches that I sell, I had mentioned to you guys in a video I did about a week and a half ago, which was about my journey in the watches industry and what led me to here. If you didn't see that video, I'll put a link in the description below. But at the request of clients, friends, and people who follow on social media, they thought it'd be interesting to learn about some other things in the watch industry they might not really find anywhere else based on my, almost 21 years now in the industry. So one thing that a friend of mine brought up is, he's actually a client who became a friend. He stopped by my office about a week ago, and he said, you know, I've heard you tell me stories about some of the cool watches you sold when you were in retail and high-end retail, and you know, maybe you should do a video on some of the coolest watches that you've ever sold. So I thought about it, and I thought, you know, that's a pretty good idea. I sold some pretty interesting watches. Now, we very often sold the Tag Heuers and, you know, all the way up to you know, $500,000 watches. But the bulk of them were probably 5, 10, 15, or 20,000. So I did pick about 5 watches that were just memorable watch sales, and most of the ones I'll tell you about are because of how unique the watches were. I didn't sell them through Watch Gauge. This was in my prior career, and I didn't necessarily go just to pick the most expensive watches, but there are some very expensive watches on my list. Now, the first one I'm going to tell you about is the Chronoswiss Opus in platinum. Now, I did tell you about in that other video just how deeply in love I fell with mechanical watches upon starting to work with Chronoswiss, which was my first job in the industry. The Opus is without a doubt my favorite Chronoswiss, and I think if you asked anybody who either owns Chronoswiss or is a fan of Chronoswiss, I would bet you 99% of the people will also agree that the Opus is their favorite Chronoswiss. But one watch that I sold will always stick with me forever, and it was the platinum version of the Chronoswiss Opus. Now, at the time, I was the national sales manager for Chronoswiss here in the United States, and during the holidays and during certain seasons like Father's Day, we would do trunk shows or we would do watch events at retailers' stores. So this particular watch I will never forget. I was up in Lenox Jewelers in Connecticut. We were doing a weekend-long holiday fair, and what's also very oddly funny is I remember I was wearing a suit. I had a Chronoswiss tie on, which was basically a tie that was red, and it had little Chronoswiss watches all over it. But there's a point to that. So I remember that a gentleman came in, I believe it was on Saturday, and he was looking at a very special Opus that we had just gotten in from Germany. It was one of either 15 or one of 25, a limited edition. So I think it was only 15 or 25 made, if I'm correct. And I believe the retail was about $35,000. So he came in on a Saturday. He probably spent an hour with me. I was telling him about the brand. I was telling him about this particular watch. Great gentleman. So he ended up leaving and not buying the watch, and then the following day I was there behind the counter again on the Sunday, and he came back in and he spent a little bit of time with me, and I was again wearing my Chronoswiss tie, and I'll never forget, he said, if you can give me a Chronoswiss tie along with the watch, I'll buy the watch right now. What's funny about it is we didn't have any more Chronoswiss ties to give away. This happened to be the one personal one that I had gotten at the Basel show the year prior. And I took it off my neck and I gave it to him, and he actually was wearing a t-shirt, put it around his neck, and ended up purchasing the watch. So I'll always remember that sale. It was a fun exchange. It was over 2 days, and it was the watch and the brand that sparked my passion for wristwatches. So that's one that's memorable for me. Next is a watch by Audemars Piguet. Now, everybody knows Audemars Piguet for the Royal Oak collection. This watch I put on the list mainly because of how complicated the watch is, and I was absolutely just fascinated with the different complications. So this watch is the Jules Audemars Equation of Time. So Jules Audemars is a collection within Audemars Piguet. The Equation of Time is a complication, which now they do in the Royal Oak case, and they did in a few other cases as well. What I find really interesting about it is that this watch will tell you what time the sun is going to rise and what time the sun is going to set every day. It also happens to be a perpetual calendar. Now, a perpetual calendar, for those of you not familiar, is a watch that will change appropriately from January to February, February to March, March to April, and so on and so forth, without taking into account you have to adjust it for 31 days or 30 days. So also a perpetual calendar will adjust the time correctly in February on a leap year as well. So equation of time to boot is already a ridiculously complicated watch. Now, each watch is actually made to order, and the reason is because they actually have to change the gearing in there based on your latitude. So if I live here in New York, the sun rises and sets at certain times on certain days throughout the year. Now, if somebody lives in, let's say, Florida or Texas or South America, the sun is going to rise and set at different times. So when you order this watch, you tell them your latitude or your location of where you want it to show you the sunrise and sunset to, and they will actually custom make the movement so that every single day you can see what time the sun rises and the sun sets on your watch. Now, I sold this watch somewhere around 2000 or I think 2006 or 2007, and when I did, they would engrave your city or your hometown on the bezel. I believe they changed that over the years, and now it's on the internal bezel ring. They print it. But when I sold it, my client actually had his hometown engraved on the bezel, and it was a very, very cool watch. And it was the first time I'd ever heard about an equation of time or a sunrise sunset watch. So that's why I put that one on the list. Next, this one was memorable for the watch as well as for the sale itself and the circumstances around the sale. Every year, the place where I worked, we would have a gentleman's night, and it would only be for our top clients. So we would have maybe 20 or 25 guys there. It was a gentleman's night. We'd have in the store, we'd have it catered, we'd have some very expensive watches brought in, and this particular night, we had a casino theme. So we had a couple of poker tables set up around, and everybody was eating and drinking and having a grand time. And I got my hands on this. This is the Clare poker watch. It was so fitting for that night because of the casino night we were hosting. And in addition to that, it is really one of just the most fun watches that I've ever had the pleasure of playing with and holding and so on. This watch you can actually play Texas Hold'em poker on. Truth be told, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't use your watch to deal and shuffle and play cards. However, all of the functioning is there to do so. You press and hold the button down and it actually quote unquote shuffles a deck of cards, and when you let it go, it stops and you get your hole cards. For those of you who know poker, you have hole cards, the flop cards, then the turn, then the river. So you can get your hole cards, then you press another button for the flop, you press another button for the turn, you press another button for the river. And honest to goodness, I think I must have played with that thing 10 or 15 times throughout the course of the night. Just went over, picked it up, pressed the buttons. It was just so much fun. In addition to that, when you turn the watch over, the rotor, the winding rotor, was a roulette wheel. So you can actually spin the rotor. There was a little tiny ball in there, and you can actually play roulette on the back side of your watch. It was beyond creative. It was beyond clever. It was so much fun of a watch. And then at the end of the night, as things were winding down, there were a few gentlemen left. Most of them had quite a few drinks, and one of my clients ended up purchasing the Clare poker that night. Super fun watch, and an even more fun night with a bunch of great people and a great time. Next, I have two watches that I'm going to talk about, but I consider it kind of one thing because the same client bought both of them, and it was a pretty unique story. But those watches are the Ulysse Nardin Royal Blue Tourbillon, as well as the Ulysse Nardin Safari Minute Repeater. A client of mine was a very big coin collector, and he happened to have some extremely rare and extremely valuable coins. Now, up until this point, he'd always bought watches that were maybe $3,000, $4,000 or $5,000. And he would come in quite often. A lot of times he'd come in on a Saturday and bring some snacks for everybody or some donuts or bagels or whatever. And he would come in and he'd just hang out for an hour or two and then go about his day. Well, one day he was telling me that one of his most valuable coins had been skyrocketing in price, and he thought it was going to be time to go ahead and cash out. And he said that if he did, he was going to buy a very expensive and very special watch to treat himself. Well, lo and behold, a few weeks later, he sold that coin, if I'm not mistaken, for the tune of somewhere around $1.9 million. Now, to most of us, that is unfathomable and incomprehensible. However, it was a reality in this gentleman's case. So he really had his sights set on a different watch. It was a Tourbillon. And I said to him, I said, well, let me bring a few watches in from a few of the brands that we carry and see if anything sparks your interest. With that, the Ulysse Nardin Royal Blue Tourbillon was sent in, and he was absolutely blown away. So he ended up buying that watch for himself. So then he started getting really nuts about collecting watches, and he came in more and more often. And eventually he came in and said, John, I'm thinking about a Safari minute repeater from Ulysse Nardin. Now, this is a $360,000 watch, and quite frankly, at the time, I had never sold anything of that caliber. So I inquired with Ulysse Nardin about how long it would take to get one. They told me 2 to 3 months. He put a deposit down, and that watch came in. Now, that is also one of the coolest watches I've ever seen. It's quite flashy for my taste. However, to watch this thing in action is absolutely awesome. Now, Ulysse Nardin is known for making minute repeaters that are animated. Those of you who aren't familiar with what a minute repeater is, it's a mechanical watch that will actually audibly tell you the time through a series of chimes or dings. Only a handful of companies in the world make them, and if I'm not mistaken, Ulysse Nardin is the only one who makes one with an animated dial. So this gentleman became quite a client, he became a friend, and I chose these two watches because A, they're both very cool and unique, and the circumstances was just a mind-boggling story. Now this one might surprise you because it's a Tag Heuer. It's the Jack Heuer 80 edition, which was made to celebrate Jack Heuer's 80th birthday. This watch happens to be probably my most memorable watch sale ever. I remember distinctly in 2012, it was summertime, and a woman walked in looking at the Tag Heuer cases. So I introduced myself and I began chatting with her, and it turns out she was looking to buy a watch for her son. Now mind you, this is summertime. She was buying it for his graduation, which was the following June. And she asked me if we would be able to hold the watch for her. Now typically a watch store isn't going to hold a watch for 10 or 11 months. So I thought to myself, well gee, why don't you just buy it and hold on to it? And she proceeded to tell me that she was a single mom, that her husband had passed many years ago, and that her son was graduating the following June, and he had just excelled in high school, and she couldn't have been more proud of him. So then she proceeds to tell me that she really can't afford to spend, I believe it was $1,900 on a watch in one shot. So naturally, without a doubt, I was going to hold the watch for her till the following June. So she proceeded to come in every few weeks and give me $50 or $100 toward the payment on the watch. And every time she did, we would chat. I got to know her a little bit more. She would tell me more and more about her son. So then the day before his graduation, she had asked me if they can come in, she could present the watch to him there in the store, and that way we could size it for him. So we went a little bit further. My coworkers and I, we gift wrapped the watch. We ended up getting balloons. We got a cake, and even his mom wasn't aware of that. So when they came in, we had a big celebration for him, and he had no idea he was getting this watch. When he opened the watch, his mother was crying, he was crying, we were crying. It was one of the most moving times ever selling a watch. I mean, you would think as a watch salesman, you don't get moved emotionally too much, but I'm so sorry about that, guys. I had technical difficulties. The video cut out while I was filming it, and when I re-recorded it, that next file got corrupt. So, as I was saying, selling a watch, you don't get very emotional, and that particular sale of that Tag Heuer was far and away the most emotional sale that I've ever made, but also one of the most memorable. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're enjoying the off-topic videos or the videos that aren't specifically about the watches I sell on WatchGauge, let me know. I will continue to do them if you are enjoying them. if you have any ideas about videos maybe you'd like to see, if we were in person, what would we chat about when it comes to watches, and I'm happy to put more videos together like that if you guys wish. As always, I genuinely appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the videos, again, to visit the website, buy watches from me, follow on Instagram, follow on Facebook. Don't forget to check out all the other videos, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Give me a thumbs up if you did like this video, and that bell icon that's down there below. If you hit on that, it'll alert you every time there's a new video that pops up on the Watch Gauge channel. So thank you guys as always. I truly appreciate it. And I have a video coming up in the next day or so on the NTH Tropics. There's a couple of new colors. I'm almost sold out of them already, but I have a video in the works on that. I will talk to you guys soon.